The air in the room was thick with unspoken words as Fernanda stood at the table, her heart pounding. For months, she'd kept herself closed off from everything, afraid of opening up again, of feeling the weight of past wounds. But now, as she locked eyes with James, everything shifted. Her world, once fractured and uncertain, seemed to be falling into place. She knew this moment could change everything, but the question was, could she trust herself enough to take the leap? And just when she thought she might retreat back into her shell, Lily's innocent voice cut through the tension, asking a question that would reveal more than just curiosity. It would show them all what family truly meant. What happened next would challenge everything they thought they knew about love, loss, and new beginnings. Don't miss what comes next. This is where their story begins. The warm spring breeze gently swept through the streets of Greenwich Village, New York, as James Anderson tightened his grip on the steering wheel. His 7-year-old daughter Lily sat beside him in the car, her bright blue eyes wide with curiosity. The sun was shining, but there was a heaviness in the air that James couldn't shake. He had been driving for the past half hour trying to gather the right words to say, but the silence between him and Lily felt like an ocean. "Dad," Lily finally asked, breaking the silence, "why is there a table reserved for Mother's Day, but it's just you and me?" Her innocent voice pierced through the tension, causing James to flinch. He had known this question was coming. It always came, but it never got any easier to answer. With a sigh, he glanced at Lily through the rearview mirror, his heart heavy. "It's a tradition, sweetheart," he said, his voice catching slightly. He glanced over at her briefly, trying to meet her gaze, but his own eyes betrayed him. He could see the reflection of his late wife Emily in Lily's face. The same sparkling blue eyes, the same gentle smile. It was almost too much to bear sometimes. "We've been coming here every Sunday since you were little," James continued, his voice softening. He didn't mention that this was the restaurant where he and Emily had met 15 years ago, or how they'd kept coming back after she passed away. He didn't need to say it. Lily knew. But today it felt different. Lily squeezed the small package she had tucked under her arm, still wrapped carefully in shiny paper. She had been clutching it all morning. "But today's different, Dad," she insisted. "Today there are supposed to be mothers." James' throat tightened. The words hurt more than he was prepared for, but he smiled through it. "I know, sweetie. I know," he said softly, his grip tightening on the wheel again. There was a lump in his throat he couldn't shake, but he had to hold it together for Lily. They arrived at the Garden View Bistro, one of the most prestigious spots in town. The restaurant, with its open patio and sparkling lights, felt like a world of its own. It was here, in this very place, where he had met Emily all those years ago. And it was here 3 years ago that she had left him. The painful memories echoed in his mind as he parked the car and turned to face Lily. Lily wasn't listening anymore. She had been eyeing the flower shop across the street, her little heart set on something. "I'll be right back," she whispered, rushing out of the car before he could stop her. James watched her dart across the street, her small figure disappearing inside the flower shop. For a moment, the weight of his grief surged back, and the memories flooded in like a tide. But it was gone as quickly as it had come when Lily reappeared, her hands clutching a small bouquet of daisies and pink roses. She handed them to him, her face lit up with a proud smile. "These are for you, Dad," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Happy Mother's Day." James froze, completely caught off guard. He stared at the flowers, his heart racing. He tried to speak, but words failed him. It was an impossible moment, one he couldn't have prepared for. Lily had always been intuitive, always sensitive to the things he couldn't even voice. But this was something beyond his understanding. "Thank you, sweetheart," he managed, his voice breaking as he took the bouquet from her hands. He had never received flowers on Mother's Day, but here he was, holding them in his hands, his daughter looking up at him with hope and kindness in her eyes. Lily was trying to give him something that wasn't just an obligation. It was a gift of love, wrapped in the innocence of a child who wanted to make her father smile. And despite everything, despite the sadness and the weight of the past, for that moment, James felt something he hadn't in years. He felt seen. They walked into the restaurant together, the bouquet tucked under his arm, the sunlight casting long shadows behind them. James tried to shake off the heavy feelings that lingered, but it wasn't easy. Every step felt like a silent echo of the past. As they sat down at their table, Lily kept asking him questions, her voice light and innocent, while James tried to focus on her, trying not to let the ghosts of the past haunt him too much. But just as he was beginning to relax, he noticed something in Lily's eyes, something different. She was staring at the waitress Fernanda. Fernanda had been working at the bistro for years, but today something felt different. As she approached their table, her face was softer than usual, her eyes deeper. James couldn't place it, but something about the way she looked at Lily, it was like she understood the unspoken pain that lingered between them. Lily, with her innocent curiosity, had picked up on it immediately. "Mom used to smile like that when she looked at me," she whispered almost to herself before turning to Fernanda and asking, "Do you miss your mom too?" James's heart skipped a beat. He froze, unsure of how to respond to such a direct question. But Fernanda, without missing a beat, bent down to Lily's level and smiled warmly. "Yes, sweetheart," she said, her voice soft. "I do miss her, but sometimes we can still keep them close right here," she added gently, placing her hand on her chest. The words were simple, but they hit James like a thunderclap. It wasn't about replacing Emily, it was about remembering her. And in that moment, the walls he'd built around himself cracked just a little. The dinner proceeded, but the conversation was different this time. Fernanda was kind, and Lily's laughter filled the air. The connection between the three of them grew quietly, steadily, and unexpectedly. And when it was time for the check, something surprising happened. As James looked at Fernanda, he felt a strange sense of recognition. This wasn't just a waitress serving him dinner. There was something more here, something he couldn't explain. Before he could think any further, Lily asked, "Dad, can we come back next Sunday? I want to show Fernanda the flowers I got her." The simple question lingered in the air, and for the first time in a long time, James allowed himself to think that maybe, just maybe, there was a chance for something more. Do you think Lily's gesture of giving flowers to Fernanda was a symbol of healing for both her and James? Have you ever experienced a moment where a simple act of kindness unexpectedly changed your life or someone else's? How do you think James will handle his feelings towards Fernanda and his daughter as their connection grows? Would you like to see more of this unexpected bond develop between them? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. The days that followed were a blur for James Anderson. Life, as it often does, moved at an unrelenting pace, but there was a subtle shift in the air around him. It had started with a simple moment, a bouquet of flowers on Mother's Day, but it had quietly transformed into something he couldn't quite put into words. Lily's question had stayed with him, echoing in his mind every time he looked at her. "Why do we come here alone, just you and me?" He had always avoided answering that question, but that moment had unlocked something inside him, something he hadn't known he was hiding. His heart ached every time he thought of Emily, his late wife, but the truth was he couldn't stay trapped in the past forever. The next Sunday, the routine felt different. For the first time in years, James had let himself be open to the possibility of something new, something he didn't fully understand. Fernanda's kindness and the way she had looked at Lily, like she understood the weight of their grief, had disarmed him. As they drove to the restaurant that day, James couldn't shake the feeling that something was about to change. His thoughts were interrupted by Lily's excited chatter. "Dad, I think we should bring flowers again for Fernanda. Do you think she'll like them?" Lily's voice was filled with an innocent enthusiasm that James couldn't resist. She was so much like her mother in ways that both pained and comforted him. "I'm sure she'll love them, sweetheart," James replied, trying to push aside the knot that formed in his chest whenever Emily crossed his mind. The restaurant looked as it always did, charming, elegant, and full of the quiet hum of well-dressed patrons. But today the air felt heavier, as if the universe itself had conspired to bring them here again. As they stepped inside, Fernanda was already there, her presence like a calm breeze in the chaos of the restaurant. "Good evening, Mr. Anderson, Lily." Fernanda greeted them warmly, her voice a soft balm to James's uneasy nerves. She seemed to sense that something had changed, that the awkwardness from their last encounter had shifted. She smiled at Lily, who beamed back, clutching the flowers in her small hands. Lily rushed forward. "These are for you," she said, her voice as sincere as it was hopeful. Fernanda accepted the flowers with surprise, her eyes softening as she looked at the delicate bouquet. "Thank you, Lily," she said, her voice gentle yet filled with emotion. "These are beautiful." For a moment it felt as though the world outside had ceased to exist. The noise, the clinking of glasses, the bustle of the restaurant, it all faded into the background. It was just the three of them in that small, intimate space, and for the first time in a long while, James felt a flicker of something he had buried deep inside. Hope. "Please sit," Fernanda offered, guiding them to their usual table. Lily climbed into her seat, her legs swinging excitedly under the table, while James took a moment to collect his thoughts. It was impossible to ignore the undercurrent between him and Fernanda. Every glance, every word shared between them seemed to carry a weight that neither of them knew how to carry alone. As the evening unfolded, James found himself drawn into the quiet rhythm of their conversation. Lily was more animated than usual, her chatter about school, her new favorite books, and her friends filling the space between them. And yet James couldn't shake the feeling that Fernanda wasn't just another person at the table, she was something else entirely. "What do you think, Fernanda? Should I try the steak or the salmon tonight?" James asked, attempting to keep things light. But as soon as he spoke, he regretted it. The question felt too ordinary, too disconnected from what had happened between them. He had wanted to ask something deeper, something that acknowledged the shift in the air, but the words never came. "Honestly, I think you'll enjoy the steak," Fernanda replied with a teasing smile, her eyes flickering to Lily, who was now absorbed in coloring a picture she had drawn earlier. "It's our special today, and you'll definitely need something hearty." The ease in her tone, the way she had taken charge of the moment without hesitation, was something that made James feel seen in a way he hadn't been in years. He had forgotten what it was like to be in the presence of someone who cared enough to offer comfort without asking for anything in return. "I'll take the steak then," James said, his voice quieter now, almost reflective. But it was Lily who broke the silence that had settled over them, her voice full of innocence. "Do you have a mom, Fernanda?" The question caught Fernanda off guard, and for a moment the restaurant around them seemed to freeze. James's heart skipped a beat. He hadn't prepared for this moment, the delicate moment when Lily asked about things that weren't meant to be spoken aloud. Fernanda smiled softly, a hint of sadness in her eyes. "No, Lily. I don't have a mom," she replied, her voice steady but gentle. "But I have people who care about me, just like I care about you." Lily nodded as if processing this answer, and then smiled brightly. "Well then, we're the same," she said simply, "because I don't have a mom either." James felt his chest tighten as he looked at Fernanda. The unspoken bond between the two women, both carrying their own losses, seemed to solidify in that moment. He couldn't help but wonder if this was more than just a fleeting connection, a moment in time that would pass when the next week came. Fernanda, sensing the depth of Lily's words, leaned in slightly, her expression softening. "You know, Lily," she said, her voice filled with warmth, "sometimes the people we choose to have in our lives are the ones who make us feel like we belong, even when we don't have everything we thought we needed." James looked at Fernanda, his thoughts scattered. She was offering something more than just sympathy, she was offering understanding. And something about the way she spoke to Lily with such tenderness and care made him feel like maybe they could build something real out of the fractured pieces of their lives. But as the night wore on and the empty plates were cleared away, the feeling of unfinished business lingered. They had shared something profound in the small moments between laughter and conversation, but there was still a distance between them, a space that neither was sure how to cross. As they stood to leave, Fernanda caught James's eye, and for the briefest moment, it felt like the world had narrowed down to just the two of them. No words were spoken, but the weight of the silence said everything. They didn't need to explain what was happening, they both felt it. "I'll see you soon, Fernanda," James said, his voice steady but soft. "I look forward to it," Fernanda replied with a smile, her eyes lingering on him a second longer than usual. Lily tugged at his sleeve, pulling him out of his thoughts. "Can we come back next week? Dad, I want to bring Fernanda another flower." James smiled at his daughter, her bright blue eyes sparkling with the same hope he had buried for so long. "Of course, sweetheart. Of course." As they left the restaurant, stepping out into the cool night air, James couldn't shake the feeling that something was beginning to change. Slowly, carefully, he could feel the cracks in his heart start to heal, one small gesture at a time. Do you believe that the small, seemingly insignificant moments in life can lead to profound connections? How do you think James will navigate his growing feelings for Fernanda? What role do you think Lily will play in the relationship between James and Fernanda? Have you ever experienced a moment where someone's unexpected kindness changed your perspective on life? Let me know in the comments below. The weeks that followed were marked by a quiet shift, a transformation that no one had anticipated, but that felt inevitable, as though the universe had nudged them all in the right direction. James found himself looking forward to the small moments with Fernanda and Lily, those fleeting encounters that left him with a warmth he hadn't known he needed. The connection between the three of them had deepened in ways that none of them could explain. What began as a simple dinner had evolved into something much more profound. It was on a sunny Sunday afternoon that everything finally came to a head. The air was crisp, the sun shining through the trees, casting a gentle glow over the city of Los Angeles. Fernanda had invited James and Lily to her small apartment, a cozy, inviting space that felt like a sanctuary after a long week. She had spent the morning preparing a simple meal, one she had promised to share with them for weeks now. And today she felt it was time to take the next step, to let herself open up in a way she hadn't allowed herself before. James arrived first with Lily in tow, holding a small bouquet of wildflowers that she had picked during their walk to Fernanda's apartment. She was excited, but there was a certain seriousness about her today. Maybe it was because she knew something important was about to happen. She could sense it, just like Fernanda had sensed the shift in their relationship from the moment they met. "Look, Fernanda, I brought you more flowers," Lily announced as she entered the apartment, her eyes bright and eager, her little arms stretched out with the bouquet. Fernanda smiled warmly, her heart swelling at the sight of the little girl. The flowers felt like a bridge between them, a symbol of the bond that had formed so unexpectedly. She took the flowers gently from Lily's hands, her touch soft, as if she were handling something precious. "Thank you, Lily," she said softly. "They're beautiful." James, who had been standing just behind Lily, watched the interaction with a quiet tenderness. For the first time in years, he felt a sense of peace, something that had eluded him since Emily's passing. He could see how much Lily adored Fernanda, how much Fernanda had come to mean to both of them. There was no longer any question in his mind. He had found something worth fighting for. "Dinner's almost ready," Fernanda said, her voice laced with a warmth that made the room feel even cozier. "I hope you're both hungry." They sat down together at the small dining table, the soft light from the kitchen casting a golden glow over the three of them. The simple meal, spaghetti with fresh basil garlic bread and a side salad, was comforting in its simplicity. The conversation flowed easily, and for the first time, James didn't feel the weight of the world on his shoulders. He could talk to Fernanda like an equal, not as someone who had to prove himself, but as someone who was finally allowing himself to be seen for who he was. After dinner, as they sat sipping their wine, Fernanda felt the familiar yet unfamiliar tug at her heart. She had been trying to keep things light, trying not to acknowledge the growing feelings that were swelling inside of her. But as she looked at James, his expression soft, his eyes filled with a quiet intensity, she knew it was time to speak the truth. "James," she began, her voice steady but vulnerable. "I've been thinking a lot lately. About us. About everything." He turned to her, his expression softening as he listened, waiting for her to continue. "I never thought I would feel this way again," Fernanda continued, her heart racing. "After everything, after the years of trying to move on, I never thought I'd open myself up to someone like this. But being with you and Lily has changed something in me. I want to be a part of your life, really be a part of it." James sat quietly, absorbing her words. His heart pounded in his chest, but there was no fear, only a quiet excitement he hadn't felt in years. "I want that too," he said, his voice raw with emotion. "I know we've both been through so much, and I'm not saying it's going to be easy, but I want us to figure this out together. I want to build something real with you, Fernanda, something solid for the three of us." Lily, who had been quietly watching them both, leaned over the table, her face serious for once. "And I want to be a part of it too," she said, her voice small but determined. "I want us to be a family, a real family." James felt a lump form in his throat as he looked at Lily, his daughter, and then at Fernanda. The words that had been unsaid for so long were finally spoken, and for the first time in a long time, he felt the weight of his past lift off his shoulders. "I'm in," he said, his voice firm, but filled with a tenderness he had never shown before. "I'm in for all of it. For you, for Lily, for this family." The moment hung in the air, a fragile but beautiful truth settling between them. Fernanda smiled, a tear slipping down her cheek. For the first time in years, she felt something she had almost forgotten: hope. Later that evening, as they stood outside on the balcony, the city lights twinkling below them, Fernanda turned to James. "This feels real," she whispered, "like everything is finally coming together." He nodded, wrapping an arm around her. "It does," he said softly, "and we're going to make it work. Together." The three of them stood there together as a family, no longer bound by the weight of their past, but freed by the possibility of their future. Do you believe that second chances at love are possible even after we've experienced deep loss? How do you think the bond between James and Fernanda will evolve now that they've decided to be a family? Do you think Lily's role in bringing them together was crucial? How do you think her perspective on family will change? Have you ever found healing through someone else's kindness? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this story, comment 100 below and let me know where you're watching from. Don't forget to share this video with your friends.